Hey there, I want to share with you a story. This is a story about how I turned a low point into one of my most badass moments. And this is for a Be On TV boot camp. This is homework for that where we're asked to share our most badass moment. And so my most badass moment started, it was a few years ago. I was asked to give a presentation at a conference. And this was over something that I had been over material that I had been pioneering and studying for several years, and I had been putting together a presentation for months to give this presentation at this conference over the tongue and how it relates to the rest of the body. And for those of you who don't know, I am an osteopathic physician, a DO, a hands-on physician, and I do osteopathic treatments. And so with that, about a month before the conference, I was then kind of at the last moment asked to give the presentation at a 3-day course here in Denver for dentists. And because of the complexity of the material I was giving and everything, I still felt somewhat, I didn't feel fully confident about it. And plus, I was also giving this to a group of dentists. So I felt a little bit self-conscious about it and felt a little bit like perhaps I just didn't feel the best about it. But I did have confidence that I knew what I was talking about, and I was excited to give the presentation. And so here I am at this course, on the 3-day course, on the last day, and I'm giving this presentation, and I'm talking, and suddenly, about halfway through my presentation, one of the instructors, and mind you, this is a pretty small course with not a lot of students and 2 instructors, and one of them obviously is not very impressed with my presentation, so he starts openly heckling me as I'm giving my presentation. And at that point, my confidence was shaken. I felt a bit stunned. I wasn't, and so I got through the rest of the presentation, but I was feeling dazed. I was like, what is going on? And part of me was like just going through and giving this presentation, and another part of me in my head was just saying to myself, you know, like, you're not worthy, you're not good enough. And I was questioning whether I was good enough to give this presentation a month later. I was questioning whether it was too late to cancel, because at that point I was feeling bad about myself. And so at that point I got through the presentation, and then as I'm sitting there wallowing in self-pity and all that, then suddenly feeling bad about myself, this same teacher comes up to me, and I'm thinking, okay, he's coming here probably to apologize, to say, sorry, I was a jerk and was interrupting your presentation. But instead, he comes up to me, and you know what he says? He says, hey, that was a pretty interesting presentation, but really I don't believe you. I'd have to see what you're talking about to believe it. And at that point, I'm a little bit stunned, a little bit dazed, like wondering, like, did that really just happen? And, you know, I replied and let him know, like, hey, you know, if you want to come work with me for a few days, I'm more than happy to show you what I'm talking about. And you know what? He never took me up on that offer. But so there, at that point, you know, I've got these seeds of self-doubt and pity in my head that I'm wallowing in, and he just poured a whole bunch of water on them and watching it grow, and I'm feeling bad about myself. And then maybe not a minute later, after talking to him, I feel my phone vibrate in my pocket, and I go in and I check it, and I'm like, it's my dad. And I'm like, well, he doesn't usually call me. And so I knew something was wrong. So I answered, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? What's up? And my dad says, well, you know, I don't want you to be alarmed, but your mother was in a car accident, and she's okay, but she's getting checked out at the emergency room, and she broke her sternum. She fractured her breastbone. And so I went home at that point feeling like, okay, this is a pretty bad day. But at that point, then as soon as I got home, my mom comes over to my house and pretty much went directly from the emergency room and went to my house as soon as she could. And God bless moms, because she was asking me to help her. And at that point, you know, what she was really saying was, I have been through a significant trauma. I have broken my breastbone, and I have enough confidence in you, in your abilities, in your skills, in your knowledge, that you can help me through this pain and help me get out of this pain to a certain extent. And at that point, she had more confidence in me than I probably did. But I started working on her, and I felt her sternum, and this was not more than a few hours after she'd broken her breastbone, and I could feel where she'd broken it, and I could feel the warmth from the inflammation, and I could feel the inflammation in her ribs and the trauma there. And I started working on it with my hands, because that's what I do. But you see, after a few minutes, after a while, and working on it, I could tell that I was failing. I was not getting the result that I had been trying to get there. I was not having the change that I was trying to get there. And you know, the funny thing is, with the line of work that I do, that's normal. I fail all the time, but I don't let that get to me. With my hands, I say, okay, what I'm doing right now isn't the right thing. But rather than wallowing in that self-doubt and pity, I say, okay, well, where do I need to be looking at? What else do I need to be considering? And suddenly at that moment, I remembered something, because I had just a few hours before been giving this presentation where I was essentially mocked by the instructor about how the tongue affects the sternum and the chest and the rest of the body, but I specifically had talked about the sternum and the chest. And so I decided to put my money where my mouth was, so I put a glove on and I started to work in my mom's mouth. And at the exact moment that I could feel the tissues change, the things that I was trying to release change, suddenly there was this change there, and then she took this deep breath. And there was this audible clunk. And then, you know what happened after that? It was followed by a sigh of relief. And she said, thank you, that is what I needed. That's what I felt like my body needed. And I was able to get out of that pain. Like, that really helped me. And so she was told that the next day after her accident, that was going to be the the day, the moment, the day that she was going to have her worst pain. And you know what? It wasn't. She felt better walking out, and she felt better the next day, and she recovered faster than she was supposed to. But you know what? That was my most badass moment. And it wasn't my most badass moment because I stuck my finger in my mom's mouth and her sternum went clunk and it popped. It was my most badass moment because of the decade or so of going to medical school and internship and residency and spending time, sacrificing time, and to go get extra mentoring, and then discoveries along the way and self-study to become the best at what I do. And that was my most badass moment because at that point I was probably the only person in the world who knew what to do to affect that kind of change on my mom. And at that point, all the haters, all the naysayers, all the critics, they can take a hike because I don't need them here. They don't matter at that point. And so my focus at that point is to change the person's life that I am working on. And in that case, that was changing my mother's life. And so I've done that thousands of times with patients. And so that is why that is my most badass moment. And so I hope that you have enjoyed this story, and please feel free to comment and share your most badass story. And if for any reason, and actually for all of you, friends, family, and everybody else who has supported me along this long journey. I just want to send love out to you, and I want to say thank you.